Hi, my name is Catherine Sandyford Tull. I'm originally from the Garden St. James. Currently live in Lower Carlton, and I'm part of the Western community. I am the president of the Western Fisherfolk Organization, and I have a vested interest in seeing the Western and St. James flourish. In our community, we have been trying to focus on the youth. We had a program where we introduced them to ocean literacy, and we would like to see the youth, develop more in the area. I know that the community center was very, very vibrant in the past, and I would like to see that happen again with the activities, the training, the computer classes that they used to have. They even had, needlework. And I know that there are a lot of talented people in this area. We need to take more advantage of the talent that we have in St. James. Around here, we have not only boat owners, but we have boat technicians, boat engine technicians, and boat builders like fiberglass boat builders. If we can, make an opportunity for the youth to learn the crafts that are available in St. James, then we can create more entrepreneurs and our parish will flourish.
St. Hill was known for cricket, and I honestly think that we can actually do a women's tournament. That would be fun. I think that a lot of communities will come out just to support the women. And growing up, my mom and my aunt, they used to play cricket here too. So I think that would be a good idea to bring back at least a night tournament, some kind of competition for women. Because there's a lot of women in Barbados that can play cricket, but everything is, we only see the men. I think that the community center can be used as some place to develop the youth and surrounding areas and people from outside of the area to learn new skills and new abilities. I think toiling and a trade where you can carry a long way, because I find that the youth of today are really good with their hands. I also think that we can bring a reading program to help where it's needed with the children as well. The youth look up to a lot of people, and the youth is the future of Barbados. So we need someone to mentor the youth, keep the youth driven, keep the youth focused, try to keep them off the block. When there's nothing going on, a lot of idle stuff happens. Mentorship will be a big asset to us. I think that road tennis is a big sporting event here in Barbados, and I think that we need to get the hardcore up and running. I used to see, when I finish work on evenings, when I walk to the hardcore, I used to see people doing a little practicing with road tennis, even the children, doing road tennis on their own. Nobody's there to guide them, but them participating in road tennis. So I think that road tennis is something that needs to come back. And also, as a community, I would like a lot of development. I would like everybody coming together. We have different competitions and stuff. We can also do a health program for the older folks in the community in terms of exercising and stuff, because even on mornings and stuff, because 6:30, 7 o'clock, you see the older folks walking around the pasture and trying to keep fit, keep healthy. So I think that even if we do a program that will bring out the older people, we can't forget the older people, because they're the people that built this community, and we also look up to them.
My name is Teddy from Western St. James. My ideas for the fire station, Western St. James fire station, is like so many ideas that I got for here that that we could turn. Instead of going the guys just here, just here lineman on block every day, and they no cheddar, no money or nothing. We could turn all here, put some beach chairs on the back, got a restaurant and a bar downstairs, A lot of different ideas that we got. You could turn it upstairs into something else, a little bar or something upstairs. Downstairs could be at least, a wholesale place. I'll be selling little juices, instead of, we will go be on a little market right here in Western Fire Station, transform it.
My name is Stevenson Tull. I'm a member or was or a member of the Barbados Defense Force. I'm a Legionnaire member, and I've lived Barbados Defense Force and lived in Weston my initial life, and I lived in Lower Carrollton, Thunder Bay, for a large portion of my life. The fire station, I think that the fire station is not being utilized to its full potential. It has a structure where it's still solid. The windows and the roof can be kind of refurbished, but it opens the opportunity for locals can bring on Saturday morning and do a flea market and expose their talents and the things that they have to offer for sale in the market and the fire station. And we can also use it as a training facility. I'm willing to give back my skills as a marine technician / outboard. That would include jet skis, whackers, lawnmowers, any two-stroke engine. I'm willing to give back my skill to teach small engine repair in the fire station if it's exposed to that opportunity. When it comes to the community center, I would love to see the community center comes back to where when I was a boy, or growing up, teenage, where all the activities, we had netball, hardcourt football, we had basketball, we had so many things, tennis, that occurred on the hard court. But because of things that has happened over time, we have 2 buildings that's constructed on the property that needs to be removed and bring back the community, allowing the community to continue and use the community center as a place where we can bring the community. The young people here has nothing to do. There's nothing in Weston that promotes youth. There's nothing in Weston that brings the young ones to be involved. And my intentions is, one of my bigger ideas is registering a club, Weston United, Weston Academy, where we can encompass football or any sport, and also offer a skill set program where someone who might not have advanced in school academically with certificates and O-levels, but they can come to the center and realize that they're good at this or they're good at that, but they're great at football or great at cricket or great at a sport. And we will bring in professional athletes who are in Barbados, who are willing to give back, to nurture and cherish these youngsters and encourage them in an academic field that they're gifted in. Barbados focus so much on school leavings and certificates, but everybody didn't go to secondary school. Everybody didn't make it to secondary school. But we have talented youngsters here artisans who can build cupboards and do carpentry, do masonry. We need some opportunity that's available for those persons, and a Western Academy would highlight and encourage youngsters, even not to go to school, but in the event that they did not make it well in school, that there's still an opportunity that they can use their skill physically or academically outside of school, even outside of just basic education, to make a life for themselves. You teach a man how to fish, and he will fish and feed his family. But if you don't, he's gonna steal your fish, your boat, your lines. He's gonna take away everything that you own. We as a community, Barbados as a society, needs to put time and effort into invest in our youth, because in Weston, for sure, we have youths that are very, very talented. They're very gifted, they're willing, but there's no opportunity. They do not have no way out. And I am involved in making sure and trying my best to stay involved to ensure that there's an opportunity. Hell or high water, I'm in.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Frederick Smith Secondary School and to Ideas Forum St. James Edition. My name is Roy Morris. I'm Director of Citizen Engagement and Media Relations in the Prime Minister's Office. Prime Minister should be here in a little while, but rather than keeping you waiting, since this is a 6:30 event and we are on the verge of 7 o'clock, we will begin with the presence of two of the MPs for St. James. MP Husbands noted that she was running a little behind time, so she should be here shortly. Housekeeping. If you are planning to make any presentation tonight, you are required to go to the desk at the back where they will extract from you a certain bit of information and then give you a number. That number will determine the order in which you come to the mic to deliver whatever your ideas are. And remember, this is Ideas Forum. So you may have issues that you want to raise, but we don't want you to raise them as complaints. We want you to raise them as suggestions and ideas for solutions, okay? So we're not changing what you want to say. We just want you to make the presentation in a manner that pushes the matter forward rather than debilitating action, okay? For those of you who may need a restroom tonight, we go right down the corridor to the very end, and there's some freshly refurbished bathrooms for your benefit. You just have to determine, they say it's bathroom 101 and bathroom 102. So you have to determine if one is male and two is female or the other way around. Well, I think we can figure that one out when you get there. Thank you, Austin. With that, I will turn you over to your hosts for tonight, Alex Downs and Tahir Bulbulia. Gentlemen.
Thank you so much, Roy. So as Roy said, good night. My name is Alex Downs. I'm the Prime Minister's Press Secretary. To my left, I have Tahir Bulbulia, who is my co-host that you've seen over these last few months. So I'm not going to take too much time. We are running behind schedule, but just to say welcome to the Ideas Forum for St. James. It's your month. It is your night. And so we welcome you to present your ideas and your solutions and have a very open discussion about how we can make a better St. James and a better Barbados. So without much ado, I'll turn over to our first guest for the night. I have Felicia Innes. Felicia.
Just say where you're from as well.
My name is Felicia Innes. I'm from Husband's Garden, so St. James South. My idea, my solution is not just a solution for anything that is only relevant to St. James. I am very involved in the disabled community. And my idea is, I have heard the Minister of Labor, and I am happy that this administration has taken a decision to give men paternity leave. My idea is that when a female or a family has a child with a disability, if the disability is known at birth, like a severe intellectual impairment, that these parents be given extended maternity leave. Because you would leave work and you intend to go back to work in about 6 weeks or 3 months. When you have a child with a disability, that tosses that on its head altogether. It is not only about the child, it then becomes about you. You need psychological support. You need extended support, because if you're not going back to work, if it is a single parent household, there's no money coming in. And I'm humbly pleading tonight that we take a look at as to how we treat to parents who have children with intellectual impairment, disabilities, extend their maternity leave, support them through the process, because it impacts on you mentally. You are in no headspace to go back to work in 6 weeks, because at the end of that period, there are very few daycare facilities that is going to accept that child. Sometimes the disability cannot even be identified. You may end up with a child that has a disability that is registered 92, 10, 12 because it is not identified. There are a lot of orphan illnesses in this island, and sometimes when I sit back and hear people speak about disabilities in Barbados, if I did not live here, I would think that we only have physically challenged people on this island, blind, deaf, dumb, people in wheelchairs. We do not ever look out for intellectually impaired. That is my suggestion, that we review how we look at maternity leave. We do an assessment, of course. We get the information and we act correctly. That is my first recommendation.
And just a question, and I really want to commend you, Felicia, for your work that you've done in the community and for raising it here tonight as well. What would be your recommended amount of time, or that would be based on an assessment done?
I would suggest that an assessment be done because, yes, I'm involved with disability. I worked in healthcare, but I can't make a judgment call. It would all depend on the disability. And I would suggest that as a discussion that would have to be had with the persons who do the assessment.
Okay, fair enough. You can move to your next point.
My next point, we have the babies. I also want us to take a look at how we support families who are aging out. Like, there are persons with intellectual impairment in Barbados that are in the 40s and 50s. I'm in touch with families, and they call me all the time. You know, is their concern? Dying and leaving that person. Trust me, I can identify one particular family off the top of my head. The father is in his 80s, the mother is in her 70s. The child is 50, not the child, the young man is 50 plus. And every day, all they say to me, but if we die, what are we going to do? What's going to happen with him? And I'm not speaking, as we would say in Barbadian parlance, about hand-to-mouth people. These are people that have wherewithal, that if we work with them, we can set up like housing situations with supervision, where these persons, before their parents pass, we can put them in housing with support, that the parents will know that when I pass, this person has an idea of how it is to live semi-independently. Because if their parents pass, it is going to be chaos. Persons who work with me in the area of disabilities, and I'm not here to offend the government, when we say buildings, I get offended. We do not need buildings. We need people with heart. We need people that understand what is going on. And I keep hearing we are going to build this and we are going to build that. We don't need to build anything. I have an idea for respite outside of a building. The same way that we get foster care done with so-called regular children, I think that if we do a good public awareness program and education program, we can get persons to do respite. Like if you have a child that is severely disabled and you need a break, a group of a family would have been identified and they would have gone through the process. And then that child can go spend 3 days with that family and give the parents a break. I even got a name for the program. If there's room in your heart, there's room in your home. Have a good night.
Thank you so much, Felicia. And you raised a really interesting point, which I will do a little bit of introspection and share with you on. But at this point, I believe that the minister, senior minister, Simmons, and MP would like to share a few thoughts with you based on some things that you would have mentioned. So over to you, senior minister.
Actually, good evening, everyone. I was actually quite prepared to wait until others had spoken, but I just wanted to associate my own thoughts with the points you had made, especially the latter one, because I do think we tend to move very quickly in this country towards bricks and mortar. And that means we spend a lot of money. And the suggestion you've made really is about bringing people closer together to families that have this difficulty. And we may find within the belly of our own communities and our extended families, etc., a greater sense of a willingness to participate and to share. And I think any of us who have had to go through not just the issue of the person with an intellectual disability, but simply a person who has been seriously ill, and you have a father or a male figure in the house taking care of his wife, but still having 2 or 3 children to look after, or the other way around. And I lived that through with my dearly departed mother. It came to a point where I was very sure that taking care for mommy may have caused more harm to my father's health than anything else. And so it is important, I think, to be able to build out a network of people who can assist and help take that burden off of that particular family. Come to the
We only have one developmental pediatrician on this island. Her retirement time has passed, and we have the government has asked her to stay on. So when she goes, the assessment time, and we have a number of persons who have done the rehab therapy technician program, and I think that we should get persons assessed, because parents sometimes cannot get to the only place, AC Graham Center. So what we can do, let the assessments be done. The physiotherapist, the occupational therapist, the audiologist write what they want done. And then we send the rehab therapist out into the community to work with the families that need this service. We need to sit down and get it right. I mean, I still consider that I am a parent of a child with a disability. She passed in 2006. But this is my network. These are my friends. These are people that I've shared 41 years with.
We hear you loud and clear, Felicia, and once again, I think the crowd should give you a special round of applause for coming up and presenting these ideas. But also the work you have done in the community as well. So we really applaud you, and we could hear the passion and the vigor in your voice. So we thank you for sharing those ideas. So next up we have Mr. Andy Armstrong, and he's going to present.
Hi, good evening everyone. Andy Armstrong. I live in Sunset Crest. I just want to endorse what Felicia said. I think that's a very innovative idea and something that would be great for the whole island. And I love the slogan, if there's room in your heart, there's room in your home. So really appreciate that. As I said, I live in Sunset Crest and have lived there for over 40 years. And I'm within walking distance of the beach. So where the current civic center is, that's where I usually go to the beach because I can just walk there easily, have a swim. If I feel for a little meal or a drink, there's Surfside restaurant right there, which is very affordable. And what I find right now, that is the gathering place for St. James Central. It's where locals and tourists interact. I don't know if you know, but there's over 1,000 beds in Sunset Crest, and a lot of those are rented as Airbnb. So that is where a lot of the tourists or the visitors to the island, when they stay in Sunset Crest, they will walk across and use that as their way to get to the beach. And I know that there are plans to build a new civic center across the street, and I can see some merits in that because there's certainly probably not necessary to have the library, the Barbados Revenue Office, the police station right there on the beach, and that probably that space can be utilized better. And I know that's the thinking that Cabinet were having, that they need to utilize that space in a way that maybe brings in more revenue for the country. But if you know the whole town beach, you know it's not only a place where the locals and the tourists gather and interact. There's all the fishermen just north of the police station, the fishing boats, the jet skis, the ski boats, and there's a whole community there where they're, you know, roasting breadfruit and a real hive of activity on a day. And so a lot of local people are getting employment from that. And I want to put in a plea that when that area is redeveloped, that we do not lose that livelihood for the people, the ordinary people of St. James. And this is part of the charm of Barbados. You know, the amount of visitors who've said, what I love about Barbados, you know, I can go on the beach and I can talk to Barbadians, I can see a fisherman throwing his net, or, you know, gets good friends with the jet ski guys and so on. And I think that is what keeps people coming back to Barbados again and again. So I just hope we do not lose that. So if a development, let me put on record that Peter Thompson and I met with the Prime Minister and Senior Minister Dogood back in April, Peter? March, okay. And the Prime Minister listened very carefully to us, and I think she took our concerns on board. She did say it's almost impossible to stop the development because ICBL have committed to building the new civic center across the street, and they need to be recompensed for the cost of building that new civic center. So while ideally I would like to see the whole site remain as an area for locals and visitors to interact, I accept that maybe some of it has to be sacrificed for tourism. But I would put in a plea is when the permission is happening, please try to make sure it's not an all-inclusive hotel. Because the problem with an all-inclusive hotel, of course, is that you cannot just go and have a drink at the bar or a meal at the restaurant. You have to pay a day pass, which usually is quite exorbitant. I mean, I've wanted to go and have a meal up at Sam Lord's Castle, but the only practical way is basically you go and stay there for a couple nights, and I just didn't feel for that, but I would have liked to go and visit. Mm-hmm. So I'll put in a plea that hopefully it will not be an all-inclusive if it happens.
Noted.
I also wanted to say something about the environment of the area. Just north of the police station, there's a small wetland, which the drainage unit, I think, had done some work on a few years ago. They planted some mangroves there. It needs a bit more maintenance, but it is one of the small wetlands. And just a little further north of there is the Hole. And the Hole, for those who don't know, and I was surprised, but not everyone knows what the Hole is. But when you come over the bridge just north of Lime Grove, that bridge is over the Hole. And that's the original waterway when the first settlers came here. And if you look at old photographs, there was like an estuary that stretched almost up to St. James Parish Church. So at one point it was a huge body of water, probably bigger than Graham Hall. It's been repurposed now for hotels, and what's left is not very much, but I'm putting a plea that we maintain that and don't completely fill in the hole. I know the National Trust and the Land Conservancy have been talking to the authorities about designating the area as an OS2 site, so which would give it some protection. And I know there's hope to put up some interpretive signs which would at least let people realize what the area is and what it was in the past. So that's basically it, but I just want to circle back to my first point that as we develop, let us not forget that the current Whole Town Civic Center is the de facto gathering place for St. James Central, and we wouldn't want to lose that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Andy, and I think we hear you loud and clear, and your plea or answer that the development doesn't necessarily come at the cost of the social fabric that you have here in the community, and I can assure you that that is definitely not the intention. But as you said, you've had previous discussions, and I do remember you from a previous, not Ideas Forum, but a previous session we would have had here at the school. So, your continued interest in the area is well noted, and I think we all share that on the government's end.
And I want to pledge that I really do not intend to speak after everybody. But on this particular issue, I felt a duty to, because up to this point I have publicly kept lips pursed, and one cannot be seen to be in cabinet, let alone carry the designation senior member of the cabinet and be publicly parting company with the cabinet of which you are part. So obviously a lot of talking and negotiating has to go on behind closed doors. But Andy, I endorse everything that you have said. It is 100% critical that we find a way, and I know how passionately, we don't always agree on everything, but we have to agree without being disagreeable. So I know how strongly Senior Minister Duguid feels about this particular project. But equally, my judgment, and I was a former tourism minister, we have to find a way of getting a coexistence of the Barbadian community with the investment effort. One cannot alienate or exclude the other. And where that has happened in the Caribbean, and we can point to places like Jamaica, for example, you get an us versus them kind of thing, and that has never been what Barbados is about. It breeds a level of discomfort, disquiet, perhaps even sometimes hostility, and again, that is not what Barbados is about. So I do feel that if this project is to go forward, and there are still some ifs on it, I do feel that, again, the local feel, the local access, the ability of our people to be able to be the vendors and so on, and the restaurant operators who have been there for a lifetime. I mean, to be able now to continue to have ease of access to the community and the community to them is vitally important. And that is, I think, the distinguishing factor that must be there if this project goes forward. And note I continue to keep on saying if, but I'm with you 100%.
Thank you, Minister Simmons, and thank you, Andy, so much for your presentation. Next up in line, we have Miss Yvette Brown. No stranger to this school, and I'm sure no stranger to any of you here. So please welcome Miss Yvette Brown to the microphone.
Good night, everyone. I'm Yvette Brown, as you would have heard. I was an educator for 41 years. I've seen, I've experienced, I've become accustomed to all of the various activities that would go on in the educational system. I want to share with you a few things that I think might be able to help us in our transformational process. Now, I'm using this now based on the premise that literacy is defined as a continuum of learning, that is, proficiency in reading, writing, and using numbers throughout life. It is a part of a set of larger skills which include digital skills, media literacy, education for sustainable development, and for global citizenship. At the moment, we have an additional reading period. I applaud that. We've also had some teachers trained to use structured literacy, and I'm going to add the word numeracy programs. And there are some attached resources. Now, some residents and some persons from the diaspora are willing to assist with this transformational process. We recognize that learning can no longer be confined to desk and class chalkboards. It must be an immersive, personalized, and deeply human experience. To complement, notice I said to complement the literacy numeracy program, we would like to source some more books. That is like activity, coloring, science kits, markers, games, and coming out of Carifesta, I recognize that our Potter and Worry can help with the literacy skills that we would like to develop. And we would like then, through this, to have the cooperative learning where students can be exposed to skills for the future. Right now, through the task force, we have books and other materials to present to schools. Earlier, we had some books donated, but right now, they're being housed at a church. So we have the materials, but we are unable, because of certain circumstances, to utilize them within the classroom. So having checked with some of the schools, we recognize that many of them do not have a library. They do not have shelves or areas where they can store or secure any materials that we present. Now, I'm going to throw this out to Minister Chad. I had note here, Madam Prime Minister, but Minister Chad, we need your help to maximize the use of our resources. We would like to see in the very near future a literacy numeracy center at all levels of the school population. Remember, I said literacy is a continuum of learning. So we are hoping that if we could introduce these centers, the children can learn through play, art, song, dance, and other non-traditional ways in order to build their dreams. Now, I'm saying non-traditional because we have to recognize that AI is going to give them the knowledge that they require in order to make it in this world. So exams are going to become a thing of the past. So I should pause and say, those who are thinking that we should continue with the 11+, you have to recognize that the world is moving forward. And it is time that we get on board and stay on board and prepare our students for a better life. So what I'm suggesting now is that the layout of these centers would ensure that we have adequate storage spaces, areas to secure the resources. Because I remember when I first got to this establishment where I was the first female principal, I discovered that the school had acquired some computers. But because they were placed in different rooms around the school compound, and like all good young men who are curious about what is happening within these, I'm talking 20-something years ago, they are curious about what is happening, they remove the balls from the mouse and they use them but for pitching, so that those computers were instantly dismantled. So I came in and with my fast self decided, okay, we have to secure our resources. That's why I'm asking for these kind of rooms. We have to secure our resources. We have to remove those computers from the various rooms and put them into dedicated areas where someone is there to ensure the safety and that the computers will remain intact. So that's why I am suggesting then these literacy, numeracy, because again, as Minister Simmons said, FinTech is going to be the way forward. So our students must be prepared to operate in a world where finances and technology is taking over. We can't delay this now. We have to make it happen and make it happen immediately so that our students who we are preparing now, within the next 5 to 10 years, they will be the ones who will benefit from any suggestions that we have now. Now, the centers could be operated, and I'm making a suggestion, by the reading intervention teachers. I recognize that you now have those. Or they could have a literacy, numeracy specialist. This would facilitate an area where the class teacher can bring the students for a number of periods a day. This would aid in the continuous assessment program that you are at this point working with. Because it would mean that whilst the teacher who is in charge of the room is doing her program with getting the children literate, the teacher of the class who would have brought those students can now supervise, observe, and assess these students, because assessment is going to be critical to ensure that students are not just lost within the system. If you don't do that continuous assessment right, you will find that some children will be favored and others will be left further behind. So to ensure that the continuous assessment is reasonable, I'm also going to suggest that we start it at what is now still the class 1. I haven't gone to the grades as yet. So at the class 1, so where you have 4 teachers who will, from point to point, be able to assess these students and give a fair and honest assessment of each child. Now, in addition, it would be beneficial if in our secondary and tertiary institutions, we can have rooms outfitted with soundproofing. I'm going to tell you why. Because again, when I first got to this school, I set up a music area because some of the equipment that had been acquired was left because of inadequate storage. We know we get the rust because of how we are located, we get the rust situation. So those instruments were lost. You need to have a room where you can put your instruments, anything that you acquire, because it's no good getting resources and then you don't adequately store, and you're able then to ensure that everything is going right and that they're still there for use for future generations. So I'm suggesting a soundproof room, because if you try to do this kind of program within the school setting, you will find that it will disturb the other classes. Because here it is, you want your students to learn through a certain medium. And if that medium is that they are using the drums, and it can be heard throughout the school setting, then it's going to be a distraction. So that's why I'm suggesting then that we have these soundproof rooms. Because, again, Bill Gates posit that, and I did say this, AI will definitely replace most of the jobs. that we are now preparing them for. They will no longer be there. So the job areas now that he's suggesting would be healthcare, and I'm glad that Felicia was able to come up and make a point for us seniors. But then we have to look at the youth because that is our future. So it is important then that we look at these areas, healthcare, engineering, and creative jobs. Again, I refer to Carrie Fester. You saw how the creatives were able to perform. Because when you do not have a job, you're going to need somebody to entertain you. Because obviously you're at home and you need something to help you to get through the day. So it's the creatives who will be the ones driving various economies throughout the world. Now, to facilitate these activities then during the school hours, we're no longer going to refer to them as extra or co-curricular activities, because that's how we have been learning to do our our music. It's usually looked as a side piece, but we want you to remove it from being at that level. Try to incorporate it into the curriculum and make it more meaningful. Rather than saying to a boy, go and write a poem, ask him to write a song. And you're going to get the same poem, but you're going to get it with a rhythm, you're going to get it with a beat. So it is important that we look at various ways to get through to our children. If we don't, we're going to lose more of them because they're going to find other activities to occupy themselves. So I'm appealing to all of those in charge to let us work together. Let us see how best we can make it happen for our youth. And if I may, I'm going to see if I could encourage business persons within our communities to help us. You could establish a legacy within the educational system by offering scholarships, awards, grants. Because what's happening is that right now, we spend a lot of our money on the students who perform well. But just remember that it's the students remaining in Barbados that we need to focus on. The world is showing us that we have to refocus, rethink, retool, and work with those who are going to be with us. And to ensure that they are adequately prepared then, I am asking those who have the means to help us to make sure that when our students go to the various tertiary institutions, that they can complete. Many of them become dropouts because the parents cannot afford to finance their education. I was somewhat concerned when I heard that the Youth Advanced Corps did not have the number of applicants required to make the program go forward. Well, it did go forward, but with reduced numbers. And I discovered that, again, many of our parents, and I should say the females, when a child reaches age 16, a boy in particular, they were of the opinion, okay, he's completed his education, so therefore I now have to concentrate on the others who are behind. But I'm saying that if we can offer these scholarships, if we can offer them some incentive to move further, then we might be able to counteract some of the situations that we are encountering at the moment. So I'm saying if you can do this, if you can even, for instance, we have some awards that we're trying to, if you look around this building, you will see some plaques. Again, if we could use plaques, we can say to the children, all right, you are doing, we want to reward you for excellence, say, in your academic and core curriculum, which I hope will be removed shortly, in those areas that you are doing exceptionally well in. I just want it to be known that we have to say excellence is not ascribed. It should be earned. And if they can earn it by doing positive things, then we will have a better society. There are a few other areas, but I'm not going to bore you anymore. But I'm going to say at this point in time, sir, we are ready, we are motivated, we are activated. We want to make a difference in our parish. We just need to know that when we bring in supplies, that we can get them through the port. Because we had some supplies sitting at the port for like 3 months. Term started, materials are sitting there, but the children could not have the use. So we would want to put something in place to ensure that we can get our materials through the port. But again, through CarryFest, I realized that we have a lot of authors and so within the Caribbean whose books we can use, so we may not have to go to any of the other areas outside. So, sir, help us to help you. I'm sure we will have a better Barbados with students who are also activated to give of their best at all times. Thank you very much.
Mrs. Brown, before you leave the podium, I just want, I know Minister Blackman is smiling from ear to ear, and I think you're perhaps maybe living in his head as well. But before you go, before you come to the mic, just have a question, Mrs. Brown. I know it's not right to ask a young lady her age, but how old are you?
Old enough to be your teacher.
I know you can be my teacher, but my question to you, and after Minister speaks, I want to know how have you remained so connected with the needs of today, because a lot of teachers will need this type of a message. And I really like how you framed it on literacy, not just from a reading perspective, but digital, financial. And then I know Professor Devonish is doing some research on literacy linked to crime, productivity in the labor workforce as well. So Minister Blackman, over to you. I know you are smiling from ear to ear, and you will dream about this.
No, thank you very much. Just a little higher, please. Yeah, thank you. Let me say how pleased and happy I am to have sat there and listened to all of what you would have shared with us just now. You've clearly articulated the need for transformation, but equally all of what you said is already what the ministry is actively doing and looking to do further. And I must commend you for not just coming, but putting tangibly on the table the direction of where Barbados has to go. I've taken copious notes as to what you've said, and I'll try to treat to them one by one here. But the need for transformation, as you've heard, is to really make sure that, one, we position the country for the future of the world. And the education system, of course, is anchored in ensuring that our children not only have the best schools and the certificates at the CXC level and at the Cape, but even from pre-primary, early childhood education. How do we ensure that in their minds they have the confidence and the tools to be navigating all those spaces? So I want to start there, because a number of things that you mentioned are things that we are actively doing. You mentioned the idea of curriculum reform, and I'll start there. We have a system, of course, that has served us well for the last 50, 60 years, particularly as a post-independent nation. But we realize that in order for Barbados to continue to enjoy the quality of life that we've had over the years, and for us to be competitive as a country going forward, our young people now must be given the tools to not just have the certificates, but to be able to compete and to do so with resilience, confidence, critical skills, and to be able to do so in a manner that is fun, innovative, exciting, and non-traditional in its approach. I have this board, which is in my hand. Of course, many of you know this as a worry board. And I want to mention here, funny enough, as I was walking into Ideas Forum this evening, and permit me to mention Margaret and Lee Farnham Badley, who would have already pledged this evening to work with us in introducing formally worry into our schools. You touched on it just now. And of course, yes, clap for that for sure. And this is the kind of things that we have to do to ensure that our young people can benefit. And why is this important in the curriculum reform? There are a number of skills that will come out of this. Yes, of course, if you want to be the best worry player in Barbados, that's a benefit. But ultimately, the skills coming out of this help you to think far ahead in strategy. Yesterday, and even recently, I've announced that we will also introduce chess into our schools at the pre-primary, well, the primary up to secondary level, similarly to Warrior. What that does, the International Chess Federation, we had a meeting recently in the US where the countries in Asia in particular, China, South Korea, Singapore, those are the countries who, of course, have very advanced economies and thriving societies. But part of the secret was that they introduced chess at least 20 to 25 years ago, and they saw a correlation between the development of their students, who of course went into adulthood, and the ability to think critically, to think 5 and 6 and 7 steps ahead. And that is what we're looking to also do for our Barbadian students. And why is that important? We must give our children a global head start once they come into our education system. You also have here this evening a member from the Barbados Jazz Society, who also would have pledged her support and the society's support. And I was so happy just now when you talk about the transformation of the music, because why? It's not just about having a soundproof room so that it's not disruptive to the rest of school. One of the things that I've been saying to the country for the last, 6 months on that, is that notwithstanding that we've had music in schools where you have your traditional modes of music, the recorder, the clarinet, the drums, Barbados is a country that is well placed to be a major proponent of cultural development through education and beyond. And you touched on that. And why am I saying this? Part of what we're looking to do in the Ministry of Educational Transformation is that at a number of schools in the country, students must be able, in those same soundproof rooms, to be able to produce music, produce beats, as it were. So, for example, if you think of Red Boys, who have their studio, a Deepu, young people should be able to learn those things whilst they're at school. But what does that do? It allows for them to be able to have the tangible, real-life skills of music and music production and sound engineering even before they leave these institutions, so that by the time they enter the market for business and work, they already have the work experience. Now, I'll tell you this, and perhaps this would excite you. I've said to the ministry, particularly in the context of the curriculum development, schools must now be able to, at the beginning of the academic year, going forward, to say, you are going to produce a national festival amongst students. But the moving parts of the business students who will help to do the writers, and by writers, of course, what do we mean? Where artists come in and you say, okay, this is what you're going to get at an event, or the cost of having a sound or stage, taking practical applicability of what you're learning in your business course, principles of business and accounts, practically applying that so that at the end of the year, everyone is now going to have a tangible expression of what they're learning. Those who are in the art side of their subjects, they have the ability to know, as I said, not just do the sound engineering, but how to manage a stage, how to put on a festival. So partnerships with the National Cultural Foundation allows for all of these students to do different things. Or science students. It should not only be that you do physics and you quote Ohm's law, and then at the end of the day you get a CXE. It is also about ensuring that there's a practical application to those subjects that you study in trying to treat a number of the challenges that we have, whether it becomes to climate, how do you ensure that the breakwaters protecting our coast can now be done in a way that's innovative, which also lends to the ability for us to export the ideas. Why is this critical? We're doing a number of things. Yes, we're transforming with the mindset of having Barbados being the #1 educational system within 7 years, but it's not just for being #1 sake. It is about ensuring that before students leave school, they have the ability to be able to have the certifications, 2, to be able to compete with anyone in the world and the confidence in being able to do so. And fourthly, in the creation of a knowledge-based economy. One of our comparative advantages is that Barbados has a high level of certification, perhaps more than anywhere else in the world per capita. But that has taken us so far and no further. And now the mind has to now be able to conceive any idea and to be able to match that and protect it through intellectual property and to export those ideas through school. So what you've said here, in essence, As I said, I don't want to take the entire evening on this because there are other people, but it not only excites me, but I also want to invite you to the ministry to tap into your experience, which is incredible, and to be able for us to continue to roll out the future of education in Barbados. And believe you me, I am persuaded, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that Barbados will shape the next 2 to 3 generations of critical thinkers around the world through our education system, using innovative and non-traditional methods, but equally tapping into our culture to make sure that we can now put our young people ahead. Because the real competition isn't between Frederick Smith and HC and Darrell Jordan. These young people that pass through these institutions, their real competition is their counterparts in Africa, in Asia, and Latin America. And we must give them that head start that by the time they walk through these doors and across the stage at graduation, that they are prepared for the world. The last thing I want to add, something that the country is going to see, and of course we work on the logistics of it, is exposure. Young people must be able to, before they leave school, have different global experiences and come back to Barbados and to download what they've learned. And what do I mean? The idea to send some of our young students between perhaps the ages of 15 and 17 to, let's say, Jakarta, to Nairobi, Cape Town, and to learn how these countries work. So we're not sending them to shop. You're sending them to understand punctuality. What are some of the innovative and exciting things that they're doing in their countries? But you bring them back to Barbados and you Bajanize the experience. And what that does is, one, you give a generation of Barbadians a perspective of a worldview that they otherwise would not have simply just by staying here and passing through school. And two, you ignite the imagination and you help them to now launch forward in their development prospects. So I say all that to say, we are on the right footing. We're transforming, not just to transform's sake, but we're trying to put the country now, particularly as a republic, in further development for the next 50 years through literacy. As you said, we have an aggressive literacy program that we are rolling out, because literacy is not, as you rightly said, not just about reading and mastering numbers. It's the application of all those things in the rest of your life. We set a very clear goal that all students in Barbados must be able to read by the age of 7, and those who have already passed that stage, we're going to work in rolling out of programs to ensure that they can also meet that gap and close that gap. At the adult level, our sister ministry led by Minister Husbands, they're also working to ensure that at the adult level, we can have this brought across the entire board. So I'm excited and I would love to talk with you further. Believe me, I could talk to you all evening. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you very much, Minister. And without hoping to go too long on this topic, I think it'd be remiss of me as one of the younger members in the room not to really nail home your point. I think I still qualify as young. But really, just to nail home the points that you've been raising. Over the last few ideas forums, we've had a number of young people come to share some of their ideas, both on a community level, but also on a national level. And I just want to highlight a few of them because what they're really doing is impressive for their age. A few ideas forums ago, we had a young girl. Her name was Naomi Dummett. Some of you may have seen her in the news recently. She came with this wonderful idea about having a national cleanup day and how important it was for us as a nation to start doing some of these things so that young people like herself have the opportunity to take care of our community as they get older. I was really proud to see, obviously, the ministry and the government take her suggestions seriously. And last month, they would have signed an agreement to have a national cleanup day where everyone across the island can take part and make this something that continues to grow with us. And that came from a 9-year-old. And so, you know, to your point, when you give young people the opportunity to express themselves in some different areas, it's amazing what you can see happen. And I'd like us to take that on board throughout. So, and Tahir, I know you have a few other thoughts as another young person here sitting with me that you want just to share with us before we continue.
Yeah, absolutely on that point. And this is the importance of Ideas Forum. I know nationally there's lots of conversations and I get a lot of questions as to where do the ideas go? Should I come and waste my time and present an idea that I have for my community or my country? But that is just one example. And then the other example in St. George as well, where the young lady, Naomi, she presented just after her the Echoes of BIM, the app that was created, which started at BCC in a class and then brought to Ideas Forum and then taken to the Marcus Garvey competition under the Division of Culture, and they won. So now they're getting funding for their project, for their app, which then working with the Ministry of Education to then install in schools. So this is how we have to begin thinking. And I remember, I think it was, a comment was made where at Parish Speaks, where there's complaints, this room is filled with people and there's no chairs left. But now it's ideas, where is everybody? So this is where we know how to take the mindset of Barbadians, where we can outline an issue, but equally find an idea or a solution to the problem that we're facing. And I think I would encourage each and every one of you, because it's easy to get caught up in the problem. But for me personally, if I can't find 3 other ideas or solutions, I can't outline it as a problem, because then I'm a part of the problem as well. So we then become complainers, and a word I might create tonight is problemists. We will become problemists. I know Minister Simmons is a lawyer, so I don't know if that's a correct word, but but we understand. So this is where we have to go. And then equally on Alex's point of younger people, just today we see the selection of Zishan Motara, 19 years old, being selected for the West Indies cricket team, becoming the first ever Barbadian Muslim to be selected to the West Indies cricket team. So in a time where there's a lot of conversation negatively around young people, there's countless examples of people doing brilliant things that we have to equally highlight. So I think this is where we need to go towards. And with that being said, I'm now going to invite another young person, Ms. Khadija Bakaria, who will share her perspective. Khadija, you can come first. Since we're on the theme of young people, your mommy is not so young. So please welcome her to the podium.
Sure. Tara put me on the spot there, but that's okay. Right, hi, good night everyone. My name is Khadija, and I'm a resident of Clover Crescent, St. James. I'm currently a second-year psychology student at the University of the West Indies, Cayfield campus, and I volunteer with Let's Unpack It, and I hope you guys kind of know what that is, but we're a mental health organization focused on youth, created by the youth. The founder is David Johnson, and Mr. Colin Jordan's daughters, Chelsea Jordan, is also the co-founder of that organization. So I think that we are getting there, and slowly, but we are by the youth. So my idea is related to the need for the reinforcement of measures in place addressing mental health in our youth, specifically in schools. We have a lack of mental health facilities and mental health catered initiatives in both primary and secondary schools. So I would encourage training educators and personnel in the school system with psychological first aid and similar types of training initiatives. Reaching out to youth advocacy groups like Let's Unpack It, whose work has been concentrated on youth mental health for about 5 years. We're celebrating our 5th anniversary this year. They work with regional and international entities such as UNICEF, which I think is an advantage for the implementation of these resources. I would also suggest collaborating with the psychiatric hospital and continue their advocacy in dispelling the myths of mental health. That's my idea. Thank you so much.
Shakina, is the correct pronunciation? Khadija, oh, you have to be in the wrong order. Khadija, sorry. It may be, you're all talking about young people. I'm now old. Mental first aid. Talk a little bit more about it, because when we think of first aid, we think of the intervention by ordinary people in medical things. Tell us a little bit.
Right, so my apologies. I am certified in both physical first aid, which is first aid where we do CPR and care for anyone that has any issues when you're on the road. And then psychological first aid is dealing with your mental health. How you speak to persons, how you care for persons. Not actually therapizing them, but actually understanding what they're going through. So for example, when I did psychological first aid at the psychiatric hospital with the Red Cross Society, they would have brought up the issue of the house that collapsed a couple years, I can't remember the exact issue, or for example, a house fire. And when you get there, or when you see people there, how do you approach them without making them feel that their feelings aren't valid, or without making them feel like you're condescending them? So it's just a matter of how you speak to a person. Anyone should take that course. I think it's important for anyone, no matter your age, religion, creed, color, you should take it because it's how you interact with persons on a daily basis. So within work, within school, within your society. And that is thanks to my mom and the Bar Association Muslim ladies who encouraged us to take that course. And the psychological first aid, as I said, is done by Red Cross Society. So if anyone has has questions about it, feel free to reach out to the Red Cross Society about that. I hope that clarified. Well, it's actually a 2-day course. It's a 9 to 3 course. But it's better to contact the psychiatric hospital for that. But it was a 2-day course that I completed. It's very, very, very good. So, anything else?
Thank you. That's a perfect recommendation.
Good evening. So the psychological first aid was an initiative that was, I guess, shared with community activist groups and community groups, but they were like 2-day cycle. They run cycles of it from January, I think from December last year. So each month they have cycles. They were supposed to have a cycle in August, which they deferred. I'm not sure if another cycle is happening in September. I hadn't seen an email yet. But they usually reach out to community groups and ask you to send volunteers. So when I did my training, there were a lot of members from the emergency services, the Red Cross, the nurses, social workers from the welfare, persons from the fire service, BDF personnel. And it was interesting because I'm a community worker, I'm a social work student, but I am getting understanding from their perspective what their struggles are and things that we might look at as that's the field they chose, that's the fire, the fire service, but there are stories that stick out with you and you understand how first responders have to self-care as much as they address the care of others. But the psychiatric hospital offers it, and it's not a course that I had to pay for. It's a very, very, very wholesome initiative. The average Barbadian can go and do it because it also helps you self-care when it comes to grief recovery. And many of us lose loved ones. You have a family member who might be ill. So it works for all of that. It's just that you have to be prepared to do this self-work. And coming from a social work perspective, the self-work is very important and differentiating what is needed, but definitely worth giving a try.
So we go straight to our next presenter.
I'm gonna take the young person category as well, just the older young person. So my work, as I said, I am a social work student, and I'm a community, so I've been working in community advocacy within my community as the president of the Barbados Association of Muslim Ladies. I adopted that role from our founder, and I think what it has done is given me an insight into how my community fits into my wider Barbadian community. And I say my community because I'm of East Indian origin, but I'm Bajan. So at the end of the day, I need to know how I fit in with my differences within my community. So my work over the last 5 years has been concentrated related to domestic violence within the East Indian community, within the wider Barbadian community. I work closely with survivors, being a survivor myself, navigating the justice system myself and navigating the justice system with survivors. What my idea is establishing a more streamlined approach from the time a report comes in till the investigation, to ensuring that there is justice and healing for the survivor. When I say survivor, my focus is on women and children, because what I have seen firsthand in the work that I do is that the children are most impacted and most affected. The children have to go through life with that traumatic experience. The children have to go through life maybe separated from a parent, knowing that a parent may have caused the damage to them, and live in fear. The justice system, as much as their units of the Barbados Police Service that are doing excellent work, the personnel is limited, their resources are limited. And our justice system does not have a streamlined approach from reporting to investigating to ensuring that the perpetrator is held and rehabilitated if that's the option they want to take. But my worry for our community is how is this impacting the future of our children who are impacted by domestic violence. The children grow up in fear. The children can then become the perpetrators of crime because they do not have the correct or adequate, efficient resources community-wide. We as Barbadians have this understanding, and we have had it for a long time, that if he doesn't hit me, he doesn't love me. We have to understand domestic violence is not just hitting, it is the psychological effects, it is the belittling, it is the slap across the head if they do something wrong, but it is also how we speak to our children, the type of terminology we use, the way, our tone of voice and the aggression. And we can't change the entire society, but implementing emotional intelligence for these surviving children. Doing the little bit that we can do to ensure that our justice system streamlines. And I speak about that passionately because I work with survivors on a daily basis, and the effects on the survivors, I have to do a lot of self-care because for me, they are my quote unquote, they're clients, but they're my family, because these are the people that we're in position to protect and we're in position to help. And when we cannot help the children, me as a social work student, almost at the end of my degree, wonder what else is out there. What else am I going to have to be dealing with in 3 or 4 or 5 years when I have my qualifications and my intent is to be a part of our social service system on a national basis? Because one thing they tell you is cultural competence, and social work is a everybody issue, but there are not many people that have there's no one else that has the cultural competence with the academia from my ethnic background. So it's established that streamlined approach for every survivor, validating her concerns. How is the justice system helping her, and how is the justice system causing additional harm to her and her children? And the perpetrators that are at large, we can't keep hearing the police can't find them when they go with a warrant, when we know where they are, when they're reported sightings. Something needs to be done urgently, because we're going to set the tone for, unfortunately, for a community that's going to continue down the line with young people taking their anger out and continuing that pattern of domestic violence. So we need to, I really would like to see some sort of measures in place. There was a consultation earlier this year that I attended, which would have been from the Attorney General's office. So I guess my idea or my concern goes more to the Attorney General's office and Minister Humphrey's ministry, because those are the entities that would control that. So I attended the Ideas Forum. There was a lot of good initiatives coming out of it and discussions coming out of it, but what I saw is a talk shop in a sense, because sometimes the persons that are there speaking are also the ones in the justice system that may not be understanding of the individual person's issue. Every domestic violence case is not the same. So that is my concern and my worry. And my idea to let us look at streamlining this process. Let us ensure a straightforward reporting technique and personnel out there trained to assist in rectifying the issue. That is my 2 cents.
Thank you so much, Sakina, and I also want to thank Khadija at this point. Both of you have offered some serious food for thought, and I think food for action as well, because you're speaking to really the essence of who we are. Taking care of yourself is more than just physical health. It's mental health, emotional understanding, and so is taking care of the person next to you. While you were speaking, Tahir and I were also talking, and we were saying, it's so important, just something like how you talk to the person next to you. Or do you talk? What do you say? Do you ask someone, how are you doing? You don't know sometimes how impactful that simple question can be, and being able to understand that is equally as important. So I think you've both offered, certainly myself, and I think those here and those watching, some next steps on how we can improve that portion of ourselves. I think, Roy, maybe we have some work that we'll do in PMO in terms of amplifying what you're suggesting here. So really, thank you for that. Appreciate it very much. You could clap for that. Okay, so at this point, I'd like to move to our next speaker. We have Peter Thompson, who is coming to the mic. Peter, the floor is yours.
Good night, everyone. My name is Peter Thompson. I'm from Wanstead in southern St. James. I'm one of Sandra's constituents. I want to talk to you about cultural development. And to begin, I want to actually give a bouquet to the government. Reclaiming our Atlantic destiny, the development of the museum to be and already the Performing Arts Center. It made me proud. And I want to emphasize that the government has proven that where there's a will, there is a way. The Atlantic, I know that the Atlantic Destiny Project deals mostly with our relationship with Africa. But Barbados is surrounded by the Atlantic, you know. The West Coast is Atlantic too. Caribbean doesn't start till around about St. Lucia. So there's another part of our heritage that I desperately want to draw our attention to, which is the center of Whole Town, the beach at Whole Town. I do not know to what extent everybody understands what a precious resource this is. We have 4 historical towns in Barbados: Bridgetown, Whole Town, Spicetown, Oistins. And we cannot afford to squander the legacy of any one of them. Whole Town, where we will celebrate, I think, is it next year, the 400th anniversary of the landing of the first English vessel. I see the Prime Minister not on. I probably have the date wrong, but it's a long time. This year is the 400th. Of the first landing, and then the settlement. Thank you. Thank you very much, Colin. The use of this precious resource is of immense concern to me, and I believe that we have the ability to make it into something which Bajans will praise us for many generations to come. It is, in a way, slightly similar to what previous governments achieved with Oistins. When we make an attraction of a resource, a community resource, historic resource, what we are doing is building our tourism industry. Hotels on the beach do not represent our tourism industry. Our tourism industry is a niche industry. We are not Miami Beach, we are not Santo Domingo, and we do not want to be. We are a high-priced niche destination whose main attraction is us, the people. If you ask people who come to Barbados why they come here, you will get a boring and very consistent answer. Oh, it's the people. We cannot afford to squander this resource by building a barrier either between our people and the beach or between our people and the people that visit us. As Andy said, back in March, I was privileged to be invited by the Prime Minister to talk to her about this proposed development. And the fact that she's reached out and talked to me was immensely impressive to me. The fact that she had real concerns about the economy and the development of Barbados was also impressive. We did not reach agreement, but we were very civil to each other. Since that meeting, I have spent many, many hours talking to many, many dozens of people. I do not have a count. It's probably close to 100 about this development, about how we are going to do the best for whole town. And the consensus is very, very strong that this is a national resource that we cannot squander. It is the only beachfront of its type in whole town. It's virtually in the center of the town. It is essentially the heart of whole town. Whole town is a precious community. And so I really want to encourage the government and the Prime Minister to use the same inclination of their hearts to finding a way to get the right thing done, to do the right thing in whole town. I have considerable confidence, Madam Prime Minister, that you do know the right thing. I do not think you would have spent 90 minutes talking to me about it if you didn't know that building a giant hotel to block the beach was not the right thing. I know Mr. Poulain, the developer, is going to ask for his pound of flesh. However, this is too important to allow mere financial considerations to make the decision for us. We must make this decision for our children.
Well, thank you, Peter. And I can tell that this is something that is very close to your heart. I can see you getting emotional about it. And so I definitely understand your perspective and your offerings. I think you share similar sentiments to Andy, of course, who would have come earlier, ensuring that this part of, St. James, but really Barbados, remains close to the hearts and the considerations of everyone. So as you would have heard Tahir said on a different subject, we take these solutions that you share and these ideas extremely seriously. And as you would have saw yourself in meeting with the Prime Minister, there's definitely that willingness to meet you and to discuss and to find a pathway forward. So again, I just thank you for that. And we have your contact information, of course, so we'll certainly be reaching out to further discuss.
And I also left a document with Roy
Okay.
for your perusal.
No, thank you so much, Peter. Thank you. So at this point, I'd like to move to our next speaker. We have Lee Farnham, who would like to share with us.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm the worry man. Mrs. Brown will remember me because her children used to call me Uncle Worry when I would bring worry boards to the school and try to plant that seed of that ancient game back in Barbados again. And I say back in Barbados because the game is not a game as such. It's a tool. It's an educational tool. But it's a game that has such, let's say, anthropological value because it is originally a game that is played by the people of Ghana, by the Akan particularly. And the way we play the game today in Barbados, in Speightstown, well, It's dying in Speightstown, I'm afraid. But the way we play the game in Barbados is the exact same way that you would sit down with an Akan tribesman and play Wari. So there's clearly a link that if I were a writer, I would make very sharply. And we call it a game, and we call it a game board. But the game has no luck factors. You don't pull cards or depend on a chance that the opponent is going to be making with another third opponent. It's a game for two people, and it is a mathematical game. We're talking about the use of mathematics, and mathematics and science is almost so critical. If you can get a young child to be mathematical from early enough in age, and I'm including music in mathematics as well, because music is just as mathematical. The logical thinking that you have to prepare for the next phase, the next move, depends on a thing that when I used to teach Wari, or when I will teach Wari, I say, check your position. Don't move until you've checked your position. And we would encourage young people to do that. See how far you are, see how much you can make from this move as opposed to another. But I'm so glad that Minister Blackman has taken me up on the game, because I feel after 40 years of promoting this game, I feel that I'm about to make some progress. I have 2,000 boards in my attic that my wife says, well, they're the plastic boards that you saw there just now. My wife says she's going to burn them the day that I pass away. So I'm sure they will make a lovely fire. They are plastic boards, and they are available for anyone that wishes to make a collection of Wari boards so that they can teach their children. But they have no seeds. A Wari board requires 48 seeds. And 48 horse knickers are no longer available very easily in Barbados. I used to pay children 25 cents a seed to bring them to me so that I could give people a board with enough resources. So you will have to use your own diamonds at home, or your buttons, or whatever you have to play the game, Mr. Minister. But I'm also a Wari man in another way. And this is more serious. We live in an area in St. James that is defenseless against tsunami. There is an underwater volcano off the coast of Grenada that is bubbling right now. And there have been a number of reports of seismic movements in the Caribbean. The Caribbean has hundreds of seismic movements in the Caribbean, normally from one day to the other. But when there's an underground volcano, there's likely to be an event for which we are so totally unprepared for in St. James, particularly right up to St. Peter. St. Peter, that Peter. But we have no audible alarm system to let us know when there is likely to be a tidal assault on the West Coast. People tell me that, oh, we have CAP, but the visitors don't know how to use CAP. I hardly know how to use CAP myself. I'm not going to wake up when that phone rings at night, and I wonder who is operating CAP anyway. We need a dedicated office that will be on alert to ring that alert. The police stations no longer have even a bell that will give us an early enough warning. The problem I've been told by DEM is that when you put up a tower that has such big horns on it to serve the West Coast, you need to buy a whole lot or to own a whole lot of land around it, because if it for some reason collapses, it may not collapse on anybody or anybody's property. There are a couple hotels that are being built. I'm afraid yours is probably the one the one you're complaining about is one of them. But we must require these hotels, at least one of them, to put up an audible alarm system on their roof and be prepared to accept the attention of the disaster emergency organization to service that alarm system. Other islands that are not as much in danger as Barbados have alarm systems. It's long overdue that we should have one ourselves, and I hope we can include that in some of the. It's not necessarily an investment that I'm asking for. I'm asking town planning or whoever is responsible for giving permission to buildings that are multi-story to allow at least one down here in Old Town and another one up in St. Peter alarm system that will blare out in the event of a nasty thing like a tsunami. A tsunami will destroy our entire tourist season. Much more so than sargassum will. That's my contribution. Thank you very much.
Lee, I really want to thank you for that suggestion, because as you were speaking and I was listening, that was not necessarily at the forefront of my mind, having an alarm system on top of hotels. And I think that's an excellent point. Obviously, I can't tell you whether it's been considered or not, but personally, hearing you speak, it makes tremendous sense, considering that Barbados is a relatively flat country, and you really do stand the risk of, God forbid, knock on wood, something should happen. While we do have CapCap, and I would encourage anyone to download it and get familiar with it, you still need something that allows people who may not have access to a mobile phone at that point, whether a visitor or local, to have that system to really give you that warning that's necessary. So I really want to thank you for that. You have something else you want to add, Lee, or? Yes. No problem.
Basically, that I live in Old Town, and we were talking about Old Town's richness as once being a lagoon where ships would come in and careen so as to do repairs and so on. I didn't bring my cell phone, but on your cell phones you will have an app that is you can take from the system that will give you your altitude. It's an altimeter. The altimeter across the front of my street in Old Town shows me that I am practically underwater already. The water, the sea comes in, brings water into my septic tank in the morning and takes it out in the afternoon. And I've had to make provision for a septic tank that can accept this kind of movement in underwater incursion and excursion. And I would add to that something that I wasn't really programmed to talk about, but those systems, sewerage systems in the West Coast are not properly maintained. Water comes in with a high tide and washes back out with a low tide. And it washes back out with a lot of E. coli and all sorts of nasty things that make that beach that we were talking about that is so precious not a safe place to swim in. Thank you.
Thank you, Lee, again. And I just want to address your first point you raised, which was on the worry. 2,000 boards, I really believe that that's an opportunity there for us to put those to good use and hopefully not have them burned. I think that would be the wrong avenue. So I can certainly see, some members of parliament looking at me and nodding, so I think we hear you loud and clear. Personally, I can tell you I haven't played Wari in a very long time. So I am probably one of many that's extremely interested to get the boards back in hand. I don't have the seeds, but I can help you pick them. So whether you need help, Minister, let me know, definitely. So I just want to hand over to Tahir to introduce our final speaker for the night. Tahir, the floor is yours. And Tahir knows why I'm saying that.
So it gives me great pleasure to present the final speaker of the night. He has the same last name as me, and he happens to be my dad as well. So please welcome Mr. Suleiman Bulbulia, or should I call him Dad, to the podium.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, son. Thank you. I didn't intend to speak, and I'm not going to be very long, but hearing the contributions this evening, it brought home to me an idea that I've been having for a long time that I have spelled out to some institutions, but it is about diversity. And I think St. James has one of the most diverse groups of people on the island. And I think that we need to capitalize on our diversity in Barbados. I think we need to spend a lot more time understanding who we are, diverse people, and what do we bring to the table to bring development to Barbados. And as Minister of Education spoke, Honorable Chad Blackman, he spoke about taking students to other parts of the world. And the countries he listed were not the traditional places that we go to. And I'm so happy to hear that, because as you go to other parts of the world, outside of what we see in the news and see on TV, it begins to open up our minds. So he talked about South Africa, he talked about Jakarta, Indonesia, Africa. And as we build relations with these countries, and I know that this government has been very proactive in building relations with countries outside of the traditional partners that we deal with, how do we then bring our people on board with this? So one of the ideas that I have been playing with for a while, and I've already carried it to the University of the West Indies Cave Hill campus, is you have an institute for understanding other cultures. You have an institute for Middle Eastern culture. You already have the Confucius Center there that deals with Chinese. How do we build out an institute that deals with the Middle East, with Africa, with the Far East? How do we get our students? And that is at the university level. But we can bring this to the primary school and the secondary schools and start, as you talk about educational transformation, how do we bring diversity into that? And it's not only diversity of people, culture, and faiths as well. Our spiritual beliefs should form part of our educational transformation. We should talk about this within our schools, because our young people are not really necessarily going towards spiritual beliefs. They are moving away from established religions as a whole, but we need to also get back to that as well. And how do we capitalize on our new relations that we're having with countries outside of this region, outside of the Western world, and start to talk about diversity? Other countries in the world are polarizing. They're building walls. We need to be building bridges, not walls. So that's my idea. How do we start to bring about diversity, education, and bring that into our educational transformation? And to be honest, we are seeing all types of people in good, and we're now seeing all types of people in bad in Barbados. So it's not to one group of people that are participating, either good or bad. It's everybody participating. So that's my idea for the evening. I didn't want to be too long, but thank you very much.
Certainly, thank you for that idea, Suleiman. And I really want to thank you for ending on a strong note, because as you would have suggested, it takes everybody, and Barbados is a multi-ethnic, multi-religious, society where we have people of all walks, and it takes all of us to make this thing work. So I appreciate you for ending on a strong note. At this time, I would like to welcome the MPs, obviously for St. James, just to offer some closing remarks, and then of course the Prime Minister, should she have any final remarks for this St. James Idea Forum. So MPs, the floor is yours at this time.
Good afternoon, good evening to everyone. Pleasure to see all of you here. I really appreciated the number of ideas and concerns that were raised, and I can assure you that we do take careful note of the recommendations that are made, and we do sit and discuss the feasibility of putting them into practice or bringing them into life. Some may take time, because there may be certain implications or cost implications that have to be considered. But we do consider everything that you share, because this is very important. The last comment that I just want to say a few things on, what Suleiman was sharing about the need for diversity, cultural diversity. I think part of what we want to be able to do in terms of education, working with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and so on, is to be able to identify classes in different countries that can have exchange relationships with our children. Years ago, we used to have pen pals, and we no longer do that. We can now use the Zoom technology to allow our children to engage people from other spaces and other places. And this will give them tremendous exposure that can be very helpful to them. But one of the things in the ministry that I take charge of, the Ministry of Training and Tertiary Education, we have responsibility for a program called Give Back. And Give Back is where students from UE, BCC, etc., are supposed to give a number of hours towards volunteer work. And one of the ideas that I have for the Give Back students is going to be to look at the materials. Remember, Prime Minister just bought, on behalf of Barbados, some materials from Trinidad, which is a collection of a lot of West Indian material, things that would have happened over the years in our region, etc. Now, these give us opportunities to create products. We can create educational products so that they learn about their history, they learn about other people within the region. You can use them to teach values. You can use them to inspire. But what it would take is to get some of these students at UE to sit down and pull out some of this information. And then they sit with a curriculum development specialist now to convert these into materials that we can use in our schools. And this is some of the work that we have to start doing. Even the program, My Community with Sherwood McCaskey, we need students to go into the highways and byways and get those stories. And then we take them and convert them into products that can help our children to develop the values and the behaviors that we want them to have. We have to saturate them with what we want them to exhibit. So that is what I want to share, and I just want to thank St. James South for putting forward so many wonderful ideas tonight. Thank you very much. You did very well.
I promised that I would not make this a competition between St. James Central and St. James South on the quality of the ideas or the number of them. I had spoken before, and I was hoping I could be brief in this wrap-up, but to be honest with you, some things were said this evening which I consider to be really moving. And perhaps too many to mention all, but Lee, you touched me in a very special way because I have been to Japan. I've had the opportunity to see the way in which the Japanese bring to the community a level of training and preparation on this very serious and important matter of a tidal wave threat. You're quite right. I have been watching from a distance the activity with Kickham Jenny. And you know, we tend to take it for granted and say, well, you know, we hope against hope and not would, etc., etc. But you never know when that day will and could come. Equally, as I think about what's happened in Japan, I know that here in Barbados and right here in this constituency, we have a Selwyn Brooks who has gone beyond the call of duty, I think, in trying to make sure that there is a level of domestic awareness and preparation in terms of the signage and so on as to how we can move to a higher ground. But there's so much more that has to be done, not only with regard to the volcano, but equally with regard to preparation for an earthquake. And my mind goes back to when I was sitting in the cabinet room when Arthur was Prime Minister at the time, so we probably would have been around 2007, 6, something like that. And our cabinet had just finished. Some of us were still there chatting. And then the table, in a big mahogany table, a long, long table, started to shake and move. And we had never experienced anything like that before. But that was the day that we had the rumbling in Barbados with the earthquake, and it could have been so much worse. But I say all of that to say that in Japan, From the time you are a little child, 2, 3 years of age, you are being taught about, the tidal wave precautions, the earthquake precautions, etc., etc. And the other issue, of course, is the need for the alarm. And I think that is critical because of the speed with which the damage can be upon you. And we have seen, I think it was the last tsunami that impacted the Japanese. It was a tremendous level of rapidity, or was it Thailand, somewhere out there, but a tremendous level of rapidity so that within minutes, it was, miles inland. So this is a real issue that I think we're going to have to spend some time thinking about. The other last point I made very briefly, Suleiman, again, you too touched me because of the fact that the transformation, and Mrs. Brown, I spent some time on education transformation, but the transformation you're talking about really is also a cultural one. And our young people have to understand their story and their history. And I went through a whole degree at UW. History was part of it. I don't want to reflect negatively on that experience, but the reality is it was not until I first had an opportunity to visit Ghana, and I went with John King, who was Minister of Culture. I was Minister of Tourism at the time. And the president of Ghana, very quickly, I tell you this, reached out to us and said he wanted us to meet with a chieftain from the Akan Nation. I believe I told Ambassador Commission this story when I was in Ethiopia. And we went, we were very touched that we were invited by the chieftain. And he sat us down and told us, I wanted to see you because I heard Barbadians were here, and you must know how important you are to the Akan. And he took us back to a several greats, grandson of his, who would have been taken away on the understanding with the British that he was going to be transported to England to learn the ways of the English. And in fact, he ended up in Barbados as a slave. And when he had not come back after, I can't remember how many other moons he talked about, but meaning obviously the years, then they called in the British. And the Akan Nation made it clear they are not going to negotiate anymore with the British. All of the trading and so on will come to an end, and the Akan Nation will rise up against them. Within a short space of time, the little boy was larger, he was more grown then, back in Africa. Now that will never be told in a school in Barbados, but it gives you a perspective of how our people have a story to tell and an experience to share, and that the script need not only be written by the people who have colonized us, but equally the script can also be written by us ourselves based on the experience. And I think that Suleiman, that cultural shift in perspective so that we can have a more holistic understanding, for me, is critically important because I want us to understand community. We now live in a time when the experiences that this region went through and the experiences that our neighbors in the north went through are being erased from the history books deliberately in places like North America. And unless we are very careful, we could come to a point where little boys and girls growing up here with family over there that look like them, that have a background and a culture like them, know nothing about the journey that they took in order to come to this place. And that would be a tragedy. So with those, not few words, but with those words, I want to say congratulations to everybody. It really has been a pleasure, and thank you very much for everyone who participated.
I also too want to, simply in wrapping up, commend all of the ideas that would have come forth. Of course, a lot of it placed emphasis on education and transformation, and I want to assure you, Lee, that those 2,000 boards that you have in the attic will be put to good use and put to good use shortly. And we have to find a way to ensure that we can get those seeds or come up with some innovative way of ensuring that we can fill those boards with those 48 seeds. But rest assured, we're going to put them to good use. And perhaps I think over time, maybe within another year, once the interest grows, there's nothing wrong with having a national schools championships of worry, where our young people can learn the art of worry, and it becomes part of our national psyche and Barbadianness. And talking about championship, I was just advised that the women for the Royals. Barbados won the championship, so I think, of course, we should give kudos to them. But lastly, I just simply want to say that, yes, of course, every month we have the Ideas Forum going from parish to parish, but I think certainly from a St. James point of view, there's nothing stopping us as a parish and as a community to have a platform for St. James to be able to build out this sort of idea. I sat there intrigued, excited, and the ideas must now not just wait for another year from going wrong again. And we have to now, in my view, have a way to, I can only speak for St. James, do this more often, particularly using technology, where people can submit their ideas and videos, etc. But I just want to thank you very much for your contributions. I found this incredibly timely, and I look forward to working with you, all of you who would have contributed your ideas, and any of you who want to say anything after, feel free to see me at the end of the forum. But thank you, good night, and God bless you.
Certainly thank you to the MPs for those closing remarks. I'll offer the Prime Minister, should she want to make any remarks as well? No? Thank you, Prime Minister. I certainly know that the MPs is represented on our government's behalf, your government as well. And again, thank you to everyone, sincerely, for sharing your ideas. When we go home, oftentimes at night, these thoughts play in our heads, and we try to the next day think, all right, how can I make this happen? How do I reach out to this person? And I can tell you that certainly people who watch this online have that same thought, because they come to us after and say, you remember that person from St. George said XYZ? I would like to try to do that as well. So your thoughts and suggestions certainly hit home, and I want to encourage you to keep having these thoughts. Don't see this Ideas Forum as a one-time event. So when this closes, you'll still have ideas. Feel free to reach out to the Prime Minister's office, and let's see how we can turn some of these ideas into reality. So with those remarks, I'd like to thank you once again for coming. Enjoy the rest of your We Gathering month, and the next time you will see us will be next month in Christchurch for the Ideas Forum. So we'll see you there. Thank you.